the Air Force Academy, Colorado Springs, was that like a huge culture shock coming from central Pennsylvania and the life that you'd been living?
In some ways, yes, and in other ways, no. Colorado was a huge culture shock. It's very different than Pennsylvania. But the academy lifestyle was shockingly not that much of a big change. My stepdad, my stepdad was a Vietnam vet and was super strict. And that was part of the reason for the conflict in the house, was because I was held to very strict military discipline type of standards for my hair, for my chores, for how I worked with my parents and everybody else, where my sisters got a pass.
Was he physically hard on you?
Yes, he was physically hard on me because if you remember, so I'm 44, it's the late 80s, early 90s, spanking your kids, hitting your kids. My dad spanked us with a belt, spanked me with a belt. So I was belted. And that was commonplace. Yes, there was a movement to try to end child abuse, but it was still happening all the time. So it wasn't until I think I was 8th grade that I got a hell of a whooping. And it was the first time I got a whooping where I didn't cry, which of course, if you remember when that may not have happened to you, but for anybody who knows what that feels like, the first time you get a beating where you don't show weakness, the beating continues, because that's like the moment that your parent realizes they don't have that kind of power anymore. So I end up going to school, 8th grade, phys ed, because phys ed was still allowed in schools then. And I've got these fucking welts and bruises all over me that are shaped like a belt, right? And up my back and the back of my legs, and a teacher sees it, pulls me into the principal's office. I tell the principals like it's no thing. Like, oh yeah, got in an argument with my dad. He beat me with a belt. And they're like, he did what? Yeah, he beat me with a belt. Fucking no kidding. The police show up the next day at the house. Wow. And they have a conversation with my dad and my mom, and it all stopped then. To this day, my mom still says that never happened.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you get along with her well now?
It's a mixed bag. I love my mom, like all sons love their moms. I love my mom. And my mom did the absolute best that she knew how to do. But I'm also 44 years old. I'm not stupid anymore. I'm not a kid. Yeah. I realize my mom may have become a mom, not because she chose to.
Right.
It may have been expected of her. It may have been required of her. It probably was. It was just what a good wife did, to have kids with the first husband, have kids with the second husband. But she always wanted a career. She always wanted power. She always wanted women's liberation. She always wanted feminism. She always wanted a very different existence than I think the one that she actually had. Yeah. So I have to respect that. I get that, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so living under the roof of the Air Force Academy, where people were in my face and I had structured everything and limited time to eat and yes sir, no thank you sir, that was kind of normal for me.
Yeah. Did you enjoy it there? I mean,
hated it.
Really?
Hated every fucking minute of it.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I hated my time at the Air Force Academy. Every time I get a chance to talk to anybody who's considering going to a military academy,
that good,
I tell them, do not do it. So, it's not necessarily because of the academy. It's not that the academy itself is doing anything wrong. Whether it's West Point or Annapolis or the Air Force Academy, it's traditional. That's what they do. They create military leaders. They call themselves a leadership laboratory. They call themselves all this other bullshit, right? But the truth is, who you are when you graduate at 22 years old is completely ineffective for the rest of the world.
Yeah.
You've had meals taken care of, your education taken care of. You've been taught to follow orders. You've been taught to fall under a bureaucracy. You've been taught to fall under a hierarchy. You do not question the hierarchy. You follow a code of honor that isn't really what you follow. You just learn how to lie, cheat, and steal your way around the code of honor. That's the reality of what happens in order to graduate those institutions.
Yeah.
The average person who goes to University of Florida or Georgia Tech or fucking Villanova, when they graduate, they're real fucking people. They know how to work for a paycheck. They know how to pay taxes. They know how to operate a cell phone bill. They know what car is too expensive to buy and what car isn't too expensive to buy. They have real world skills that when you grow up in those core foundational young adult years in a protected institution like a military academy, you don't get any of that shit.
Societal skills.
Correct.
Yeah.
What it means to really be an American.
Yeah.
Not just an American soldier,
yeah,
but really live and breathe the freedoms and the sacrifices and the responsibilities of an American citizen.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it makes sense why they do that, because they need you to be that. Was that kind of your takeaway even at that age? Because that's a pretty surprising perspective for a 22-year-old to realize, in that moment. Is that what you thought even then?
No, it was funny because, all I could see then, I was a bad cadet. I was not good in the military. I will be the first one to raise my hand. Everybody who knows me will agree. I struggled with all the rules. I struggled to prioritize the way they wanted me to prioritize. I tried to have a life. I was always chasing tail. I was always trying to make friends. I was always trying to find a party to go to. Like, I wanted to do something to experience life. Whereas what they wanted us to do was shine your shoes, iron your uniform, keep your bed corners tight, right? Yeah. That was the world that they wanted, and it was not the world I was in. So as a result, I barely graduated, 2.7 GPA and whatever else. Still graduated, still called lieutenant at the end of the day like everybody else. Yeah. But it was very different. What the moment that it struck me was when I left the Air Force Academy and my first assignment, two fucking things struck me. My first assignment at the Air Force, was to be an instructor at the Air Force Academy.
Really?
How the fuck, man? How do you have a 2.7 GPA? You hate your entire existence there. Everybody at the institution hates you also. But when the higher ups take a look at your file, they're like, you know what we need this person to do? We need them to teach more people. Wow. So it was fucking crazy. So I ended up in the phys ed department. I was a varsity fencer while I was there. I was a decent athlete while I was there. So that's the department they put me under. I served under a naval commander who used to call me boy. Like,
Jesus.
Get your work done, boy. Open the door, boy. It was fucking crazy. But my point is, it wasn't until I had to find an apartment and I didn't know how to do that. Yeah. And then I had to pay a monthly bill to rent the apartment. I didn't know how to do that. I had to I had to pay a cell phone bill. I didn't know how to do that. Pay car insurance. I didn't know how to do that. And I'm like, what the fuck have I had my head up my ass my whole life? And then I realized like, oh no, my girlfriend that I just met, she's been doing this since she was 18. Her mom, her dad, her guidance counselor, her somebody taught her, this is what you have to do to this, and this is how you fill this out, and this is how you balance a checkbook, and we didn't learn any of those skills, man. Yeah. So I had to figure all that shit out when I was 22 years old, and then in my Air Force career, I'm meeting ROTC graduates, I'm meeting OTS graduates, I'm meeting, these other people, and they all have shit figured out, and they have their heads on straight, and they're not overwhelmed or confused by stuff, and I'm sitting here and I'm still like, well, shit, man, like I'm still chasing tail, but I'm also trying to figure out why my credit score is fucked because I was told I had to take a loan in my junior year with USAA. And now I owe the world $20,000, but I only make, a paycheck of $700 a week. So I don't really know how this is supposed to work, where all of them are like, oh, well, you're fucked before you even know it.
Yeah. Was there anything you enjoyed about the Air Force Academy?
So it was, as funny as this is,
CIA believes that all people are born with a spy secret superpower. For some people, that means they can win deals. For others, they can spot liars. Some can even seduce lovers. I built a free 3-minute test to help reveal to you exactly what your secret hidden superpower is. All you have to do is click on the link in the description below, take the test, and start using your spy superpower to stay ahead of 99% of people.
The really good cadets, like the people who really succeeded there, I've got a handful of people, right? Kenny Horton, Peter Euler, Eric Lathrop. There are these guys who, they were so good at being cadets. They sacrificed everything. Stayed up late, doing their homework, polishing their shoes, ironing their shirts. They were unflappable fucking people. Like they just couldn't be brought down. They couldn't be distracted like I was distracted, and they couldn't be torn down by the process, and they always tried their best, always, right? And I love these guys to death, and they're absolute inspirations. They're all three of them senior military officers now, but all three of them, they all have a different opinion about the Air Force now, right? Yeah. So I left as soon as I could after 5 years of service. They went on to make careers out of it. And now they're at different stages of their career, and they've come to make certain, they've had the same realizations that I had, only
way down the road. Yeah. So does that constitute the thing you enjoyed about the Air Force Academy?
It was the good guys,
okay.
The good people, right?
Gotcha.
Because they really are inspirational. Yeah. There hasn't been a day of my life that hasn't gone by where I don't reflect on the young faces in my memory of these, of people like the three that I just mentioned, where you're like, Jesus, they were They just didn't stop trying. Whereas that's the Yoda thing, right? Do or
Yeah.
do not. They did it every day.
Yeah.
Where many of my days at the Air Force Academy, I just said, fuck it.
Yeah, you're just checking the box.
Yep.
All right, so once you did the tour there, how long were you there for?
So I was in uniform until 2007. So I graduated in 2003. So 4 years at the Air Force Academy, 5-ish years, 4.5 years as a uniformed officer. Checked out as a captain, and that was when I got my call to join CIA.
For the rest of the time in the Air Force, what did you do?
So I started by in pilot training. After I spent a year with the athletic department teaching, I got picked up for pilot training. I went to pilot training for about 9 months. I was assigned to a C-130, which was like mission critical. You're talking about post 9/11 Afghanistan, Iraq wars going on, but I did not want to fly a C-130. So I, made it very clear to my squadron commander. I was like, if you want me to fly, I want to fly a helicopter. I wanted to do search and rescue. I've got the numbers to fly a helicopter. I've earned the right to pick what aircraft I fly. This is what I want to do. Needs of the service. He looked at me in the face. He was like, needs of the service, you fly a C-130. So I put in my paperwork to leave pilot training. My slap on the wrist for leaving pilot training was they assigned me as a 13 Sierra, which is a nuclear missile officer. So they took me out of the sky and they put me 100 feet underground. So I spent the rest of my career as a nuclear missile officer. I was successful as a nuclear missile officer, which won me some awards, won me some recognition, et cetera, et cetera. So it turned out to be a good thing, but it was definitely humbling to realize that I had pissed off senior Air Force command and had to get penalized all the way to the bottom of the shoebox.
You're going to the bunker. Yeah. What does a nuke officer do?
So there's, it's one of those things that I didn't realize what we did either until I learned it. So the launch control capsule, or the LCC, is where your missileers actually sit, which is geographically separate from the missiles themselves. So I always thought that if you sat in a silo, it's like you sat in a silo next to a missile. That's not how it works. The missileers, missile officers, what they do is they manually process codes that come in called emergency action messages, EAMs. They process these alphanumeric codes. They translate them through a manual processing system into a different alphanumeric code. And then they program that code manually into a system that translates it through an encrypted cipher into an action. And you never know what your action is. So really what a nuclear missile officer is a manual step between two automated steps that lead in the process of either launching or not launching a nuclear missile. Sometimes they're retargeting the missile. Sometimes they're doing a maintenance check on the missile. You never know what action you're actually doing. All you know is that you do the manual step of translating one alphanumeric into another alphanumeric according to a pre-existing process.
And so in terms of the process of, let's say a nuke is going to be fired on an enemy combatant for real, what does that process look like?
So that is exactly why the process, like the step that we have, that's why it's built the way it's built. Because it's built so that you can't be a conscientious objector. If the president decides to launch a nuke, let's say on Syria, he's going to have a briefcase, a nuclear football. Inside that, there is a transmitter and there is a plastic card, like if you think of like a oversized playing card that's made of plastic. He cracks the card across a seam and pulls out a 6, 10, 12-digit alphanumeric code. And then the football case is a transmitter, so he can type this alphanumeric code into the transmitter. That is a launch code. So anytime you hear about launch codes, that's the launch code. It's in the briefcase. That transmitter then sends that code to all the nuclear bases, all the silos, everything at once. But only the nuclear silos that are targeting the target that was part of that launch code, only those missiles are activated. So that code that he types in is the emergency action message that comes across our system. It's re-encrypted in a different alphanumeric. We demodulate that alphanumeric, put it into another system that runs that alphanumeric against an classified encrypted cipher. That cipher then knows whether or not the launch code is valid, confirms which missiles are valid to launch against that launch code, and then launches the missiles. So you would never know, because remember, we're in a capsule that's geographically separate from the missiles. We don't even know if we launched. We have zero idea. We just plug it in, hit enter, plug it in, hit enter. Sometimes those codes come with a command to twist to turn your key. So sometimes you turn your key along with the alphanumeric. You never really know what you're doing.
So if one was launched, nobody would actually know if they were the ones that launched it.
Correct.
Or I mean, whoever's servicing the missile site's going to know because the fucking missile actually left, right?
Right. So the people that would know, as funny as it is, are actually the military police, whose job it is to secure the missile field because they're always driving around. They would notice when in the middle of the night, fucking 200-ton concrete block blows off and a rocket goes off.
Yeah. So with this nuclear football and the key that you crack, which sounds like almost like a chem light.
Yeah.
Two questions with that. One, like, are there a bunch of different cards? Like, here's the Syria card, here's the New Zealand card. Not that there probably even is one. Here's the Russia card. Like, is that how it's organized?
From what I understand, there's a country code, just like when you call your cell phone. There's a country code that's always current and programmed in. So essentially, when they crack the nuclear code, they put a country code and then a valid nuclear code, and that's what translates into the system. And I'm sure there's other, sublines that I was never read in on.
Yeah.
But that's the basic unclassified version of how it all works.
Okay.
And to your point about, we never know. One of the things that was really humbling about that job was discovering that we're just a redundancy.
Right.
Because the nuclear missile program has to always be prepared for what to do if there is a conscientious objector, if you're sick, if you're incapacitated. Maybe this is a retaliatory launch, and the first launch already happened, and Russia killed the nuclear capsule crew. We're not even needed, right? Because the reason that code gets sent worldwide to all nuclear bases is because if you and I are in one capsule and we have our 10 missiles, and our 10 missiles have 3 warheads each, if we're incapacitated because we're fighting or we're sick or we got blown up by the Russians, our missiles are still live. So now somebody else's crew 200 miles away, when they execute on that valid launch code, our missiles will launch because somebody else's crew validated the launch code. Yeah. And then if every ground crew everywhere was neutralized simultaneously because they poisoned the water, let's say, right? If everybody was incapacitated, they'd fly a fucking plane over our heads with 2 people in it who would send a validated code remotely to all the nuclear weapons, and the right ones would launch. Like, you're a redundancy of a redundancy of a redundancy. Classic military protocols, humbling, but also kind of genius.
Yeah. Well, genius in terms of making sure it happens under any circumstance.
Yeah.
The football, who's actually carrying it?
So that's a big question I've always wondered too. The president doesn't actually carry it. Somebody on the president's staff actually carries it, but I don't know I don't know what the name or title of that person is. Yeah. And like, we've all seen the president at the Rose Garden, in the Oval Office. Like, we've all seen the president without seeing a person carrying a football.
Yeah, you never see anybody carrying a fucking briefcase or whatever.
So it makes me wonder who that person is. It would also make sense that there's probably a protocol in place. So that person is always behind a camera. That person is always within 50 feet or something like that, but maybe not always on top of the president.
Would there be an Air Force guy or an Air Force officer that's servicing the football?
Yeah. So I would anticipate either it's a Department of Energy official, sworn Department of Energy officer, or a sworn U.S. Air Force officer, or a sworn U.S. Navy officer. Yeah. And I say that, plainclothes officers. I say that because the only 3 arms of the real nuclear triad are ground-based missiles controlled by the Air Force.
Submarines.
Yep. Sea-based missiles controlled by the Navy. And the Department of Energy is actually the federal oversight for all nuclear weapons and all nuclear energy generation. So people don't realize that either. DOE is actually the primary. So those 3 would be the only people I would imagine they'd put in charge of that football.
Yeah. I mean, I've known a few guys that have gone and worked for DOE doing nuke transport shit and site security and all kinds of stuff. It's a fascinating line of work for sure. What is the training like for a nuke officer? Like, when you go from being a fencing instructor at the academy to being a redundancy in the nuke chain.
I had, so for people who don't know, pilot training is a shit show. Pilot training sucks. I think when you go to Naval Flight Aviator School in Pensacola, I think that's the only fun, quote unquote, fun version. And I'll let a naval aviator tell me if that's true or not. But for Air Force, it sucks everywhere. It's 14-hour days of rote memorization and drilling and everything else, and it sucks. But Nuke School was fun, dude. Nuke School was a shit ton of fun because There's like no stress because everybody basically labels a nuclear missile officer as like the shit cans of the Air Force anyways. So there's zero pressure for you to be like high achieving or be excellent, right?
A low bar.
Yeah, but then to pass the ASVAB, to get to nuke school, you got to be smart.
Yeah.
So you got a bunch of like smart people with no pressure to overachieve.
Yeah. Smart rejects.
Yeah, and you're all sitting there knowing that no matter how hard you try or how much you slack, you're all going to end up underground 30 days out of every 180 days, right?
Yeah.
So you already know it's coming. So you're just kind of on this path, and I mean that was the most true Air Force experience I had. Like the officers club every Friday, you know, playing pool and shooting darts and having barbecues at friends' houses, and you're only working 8 hours a day, and you know that was it. People getting engaged, people dating, and you know people getting drunk on the weekends and on 3-day weekends. Like that was a fun time.
So what is a typical 8-hour shift or the 30 days underground out of 180? What does that consist of?
So I'll go back one step, because when it comes to nuke school, most of what you're doing at nuke school is understanding the operating systems that drive the capsule.
Are you learning about the capabilities in terms of how many megatons or whatever the fucking bombs are? And, and they're like laughably more powerful than Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right?
But also more controlled. Yeah. So yes, you're learning about the warheads and the yields. You're learning about the realities of what does the world look like before you launch? What does the world look like after you launch? And you're supposed to be still be a viable officer after you launch. So, you know, you turn those keys, you launch those weapons. You don't just stay underground. You got to come out through the escape hatch and then start leading soldiers again, right? So there's all this stuff that goes into it, plus how the targeting system works, how the rocket system works, how the maintenance system works. How do you communicate with the military police? How do you communicate with the chef? How do you communicate with command and control? And how do you escalate? And all the gigantic book of checklists. You got to run through all those checklists and go through simulators. They have missile silo simulators that you actually go through all the actions for all the different outcomes. So it's fun, but it's like 6 or 8 months of that. All of that happens so that when you get on the job and you're actually sitting in the silo, you're doing very little.
Yeah.
Like every 45 to 90 minutes, a new EAM comes in. You go through the whole process of doing your tippity tap, bippity boppity boop, and then you wait for 30 to 90 minutes or 90 to 45 to 90 minutes for the next one and the next one. And for me, in 2008, they moved us to 3-day shifts. So you would be underground with the same person for 3 days. And that was coming off of a 24-hour shift before that. So
is it ever co-ed?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, is there some shit going on?
Always.
Hey, we can make this 3 days go by real fucking fast.
Pun intended.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you that's what the life, I mean, what you do in the capsule, as you would expect, is peacetime operations. So it's just, I mean, the most exciting thing happens is a maintenance alarm goes off, right? Because a rabbit runs across the nuclear site. That's about it.
So what you're telling me is that there's a strong possibility that right this second, some nuke officer is getting blown underground just to pass the time.
Yeah. I mean, there's
a strong chance.
There's a strong chance. And I would actually say even stronger that the chances are both of them are butt ugly.
Yeah.
Because if they were good looking, the Air Force would have put them somewhere else.
Back to the school portion, is there time spent on adversarial capability and how we stack and how everybody else stacks up?
Yes, and that's one of the most interesting things about it. So I actually got my top secret SCI clearance from the Air Force. SCI being Special Compartment Information. You can't work at CIA unless you have a TS-SCI. That's what takes the most time for most candidates who go into the CIA. So it was the Air Force that got me my TS-SCI, because in order to learn the nuclear categories of classification, you have to be an SCI. And that was where I learned about, Chinese missile capabilities, Russian missile capabilities, the truth behind rumored nuclear capabilities, because there are countries that people don't know if they have nukes. Nobody knows officially nobody knows if the UK has nukes, if Israel has nukes, if North Korea has nukes, if Iran has nukes, if Syria had nukes, if Iraq had nukes. So the classified side of those, you learn in that school system. But then you also learn how our missiles are different or better or worse than some of their capabilities. You learn about Russians' train-based nuclear missiles and China's liquid fuel-based nuclear missiles, because all of America's nuclear missiles are, all of America's Air Force missiles are solid state, solid fuel. I think the Navy missiles might also be solid state fuel.
What is solid state fuel?
Solid state fuel is essentially what your your fireworks on 4th of July. Yep. It's
shit.
It's a fuel source that's dehydrated.
Bottle rockets.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. Only a little bit more powerful.
Right. Well, yeah, I would hope. Fuck, that one only went above the roof of the house. So what window, years-wise, did that take place that you were there?
2000. So I graduated in 2003, and then I went into the Air Force Golden 13 program teaching at the academy until 2004. And then I went from there to pilot training for a year till 2005. And then I was assigned to a nuclear base in 2006. So I was underground from early 2006, late 2005, until I left in like Valentine's Day 2007.
Okay. So in that window of time, obviously the international capabilities, I'm sure, have shifted or changed, maybe even significantly, maybe not, who knows. But at that time, can you speak to who you are the most, or who we are the most worried about?
Yeah, so I remember very clearly during my CIA application, one of the essays I had to write was an open source intelligence report assessing our biggest threats. And how fucked up is this? I wrote, because I got chosen for CIA, so I must have been more right than wrong. My two adversaries were Iran and Venezuela.
Really?
Yep. Iran and their expanding dreams of the Shia Crescent and the Caliphate, et cetera, et cetera.
That makes sense. Venezuela is a big fucking surprise.
Back in 2007, it was not, right?
Wow.
Back in 2007, 2008, they were one of America's primary traders for oil. Like, our oil industry was heavily dependent on Venezuela. You had the rise of Hugo Chavez and the socialist demise of what was otherwise a very successful, very wealthy country.
So they have a significant nuke capability?
No.
Okay, this is just in general.
Yeah, the two biggest threats to the United States that I wrote about were those two countries.
Okay.
When it comes to nuke capabilities, it was Syria, and Iran.
Really?
Yeah, Syria. Because what Syria had were launchable chemical weapons, which we then saw them use later on.
I guess having spent time in the CIA, subsequent to your time as a nuke officer, do you personally feel like China and Russia are big nuke threats to us realistically?
It's a double-edged sword. I would say that nuke threats are real. Nuke threats against the United States are not very realistic.
Yeah.
Right? It's a good chance that in our lifetime we're going to see another nuke go off. It's not going to fucking happen in the United States because every country in the world knows nobody outperforms our nuclear capability. So to launch against us guarantees that we will launch back and you're going to be decimated, right? Yeah. Whereas we are also a reactive, and everybody knows this, we have a reactive nuclear policy, which means we're not going to launch a nuclear missile unless somebody else executes first strike, and we believe with high confidence that that first strike is destined for the United States. So consider what Iran did to Israel after Israel killed some leader. Actually, after Israel bombed the Iranian outpost in Syria, they sent 300 drones to Israel, right? Well, in the weeks before those drones, Iran told everybody. They told the United States, they told Iraq, they told Jordan, they told Syria, they told the UK, they told the UN, we're going to send a lot of drones at Israel in retaliation for them killing our folks, right? So they announced it to the whole world because the one thing they did not want was for anybody to misunderstand that those drones were headed to Israel. If they would have thought those drones were headed to an American aircraft carrier, or if those drones were headed to an air base in Jordan or Iraq, they knew shit was going to go nasty. So they announced it to everybody. So what I would anticipate is if China or Russia, who have the most advanced nuclear capabilities in the world outside of us, if they choose to use a nuke, either they will announce it to us in back channels so that we know it's not coming for us, and then they'll use it, or it's going to get smuggled through some proxy group, and it's going to be a fucking briefcase nuke that goes off. Yeah. And that's, for me, that has been the highest likelihood of a nuke conflict, has been Ukraine, Kiev, for a long time for me.
Either a tactical or a briefcase.
Yeah. Yep, smuggled through Belarus, because you know what happens when a briefcase nuke goes off in Kiev, and your due diligence shows that it came from Belarus, but Belarus isn't nuclear capable, but Belarus is a proxy for Russia, but Russia denies it coming from Russia and Belarus denies it coming from Belarus, then the only thing left is for us to say that it's some fringe, uncontrolled group. Either way, nobody pays a price except Kiev.
Yeah. For our capability, once it's launched, is there a way to? There's no way to cancel it.
If that is an upgrade to the system, it's a new upgrade. But the last I heard, which was still when I was with the with CIA, they're fire and forget, man. Once they're up, they're up. Yeah. I would be surprised if there was no cancel button somewhere by now. But when I was there, man, that was how it worked. Once you launched them, you are 100% dedicated, which is why we are not a first strike nation.
Yeah.